Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. It's been over a year since we've done a Ask Me Anything session, and that 1 year, uh, very much has happened. I mean, on the personal side, I had a daughter. I now have a dog. And on the professional side, we've seen a pretty profound transformation of the world. We've seen a revolution in the artificial intelligence space. We've seen the release of the Apple Vision Pro, and we've seen a massive improvements in robotics, continued improvements in solar and battery and general electrification. And the economy, which people were expecting to go in recession in either 22 or 23, actually didn't do so. And we may actually be heading for a soft landing. And so I've been collecting my thoughts on all the trends. I've been collecting your questions for the last week or so to discuss all the things that have happened and changed and should be considered as we think through where we stand and where we're going in this coming year. So, without any further ado, let's get going. Welcome to episode 45 of Playing with Unicorns. Ask Me Anything. So feel free to type your questions in the chat. I will try to address them in real time as they come along, but I'll start in the meantime with questions that were posed via email or on social media ahead of the show. First big set of questions concerns artificial intelligence. And general questions seem to be, where are we? Where are we heading? What are the timelines? And why has FJ Labs in a way been contrarian, right? Like it feels like everyone else has gone all in investing in artificial intelligence, and we've been doing much more quote unquote boring things like B2B marketplaces, digitizing B2B supply chains, SMB enablement, etc. And before I answer that specifically for artificial intelligence, let me take a little step back. In the history of technology, humans have typically overestimated how quickly something is going to happen and underestimated its long-term fundamental impact. And that's because as founders and entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to live in the future. I wrote a blog post a few months ago called "The Timing is Everything." And the thing is, because as founders and entrepreneurs, we're at the cutting edge of technology, we think these things we live and imagine will happen sooner than they typically do. I mean, we have a tendency to be rather optimistic, which obviously defines us. We wouldn't be founders if we weren't that optimistic. And as a result, we think things will happen immediately. But if I go back to the first tech bubble in the late 90s, all of the ideas that were created then, pets.com, the webvan, e-toys, etc., actually were ideas that made sense. It's just the infrastructure and the penetration of the internet was not high enough for it to work. And so all these companies actually did fail and go under in 2000, 2001, but actually came back in a new form much later. Of course, the Instacart would be the equivalent of Webvan, or Chewy would be the equivalent of Pets.com. Amazon writ large now sells everything, including toys. And so these ideas make sense once you have enough penetration, the right cost structure, etc. And so as I think through AI, I think something similar is happening. They have what people call these hype cycles, right? And right now, I suspect we're either past the top of the hype cycle or at the very near the top of the hype cycle when it comes to AI, where everyone's thinking it is going to transform society as we know it, basically sooner rather than later. And of course, the user experience when you play with Midjourney or DALL-E or frankly GPT itself in terms of text Q&A is extraordinary. But you need to think through how long it's going to take for actually that to translate in terms of being used by the largest components of GDP, which are like government and large enterprise. And I suspect that that's where there's possibly a disconnect, where it will take longer than people suspect, right? Do I think in the very long run, you're going to be able to use AI to have like the most efficient medical claims processing? Absolutely. Do I think anytime soon, someone's going to do that with the hallucination problems and the potential liability problems if you're doing it incorrectly. Probably not, right? And so, while I suspect that the AI revolution, we're currently overestimating how quickly it will impact the world, we're massively underestimating the impact it will have in the world. And right now, we're seeing these massive investments going in at very high valuations in what I would consider to be mostly non-differentiated models. Everyone's using the same data, the same types of LLM, and no business model. Now, there's a few exceptions to that rule, right? There are some categories where there's willingness to pay, for instance. So if you're Midjourney, it makes sense. Midjourney, in a way, is replacing stock photography. There's clear willingness to pay for stock photography, so there's no reason there wouldn't be a willingness to pay for Midjourney to replace it. Let me actually take a pause. I'm seeing no comments, which is suggesting that comments are not working for some reason. 1 second. Anyway, hopefully we can fix that while the stream is going. So what we've been doing, by the way, is, in a way, every company we're investing in is an AI company. Every startup I know is using AI in one of two ways. One is to improve its productivity, so everyone's replacing their customer service agents with AI, and developers are using them to become more productive. And frankly, a average developer could become a good developer and improve its productivity dramatically. On the second side, we have how do you change user interfaces with AI? And there are two or a few different types of approaches. When you think of discovery, let's say you're a consumer and you're browsing. Today, you have three paths for buying something. If you know what you're looking for, you go in the search engine, you go to Amazon, you type it, you get it. Yeah, maybe you can improve search results a little bit, but it's not going to be fundamentally changed. If you go to something like Vinted, you just like to browse through listings. Again, the browsing is part of the experience. We're not trying to make it more efficient. As a result, AI doesn't play a role. But things that are like considered purchases, so where you need to actually think through it. Think of like a company like Curated for high-end sports equipment, like skiing equipment, or for travel, or frankly even buying a car. There I can see AI fundamentally changing the game. And we're seeing the implication or implementation of AI in existing startups because they already have the data. So for instance, we have a startup called Rebag, and Rebag is a handbag marketplace. And they happen to be the Kelley Blue Book for handbags because they have all the pricing history, etc. And the user experience for selling there is mind-boggling. They have an AI called Claire, and you can go and take a photo or a few photos of your handbag. It'll figure out the title, so the exact model it is, the description, the state it's in, and give you and figure out the correct price. And your handbag will be sold in minutes. Compare that to the traditional experience on, let's say, an eBay, where you need to write your title, your description, pick the category, select a price, and then wait a week or two for it to sell. It's a ginormous user improvement. So as I think through this, when we think of what do we want to be investing in AI, we want to be investing in vertical applications and categories where there's a business model and differentiated data sets. And for the most part, right now, we're not seeing that, which is why we've been focusing on, I guess, what I would call it the digitization of B2B supply chains, because there we're talking about trillions of dollars where nothing has come online. And imagine you want to buy petrochemicals. There's currently no way to do so. There's no catalog where you have the availability. There's no online pricing. There's no connectivity to the factory to understand a combination of availability and manufacturing capacity. There's no online ordering. There's no online payment. There's no tracking. And there's no financing. And all of these can be different companies. So pause here on the AI thing, and I'll go to the second main set of questions on AR, augmented reality, and the Vision Pro. Second, let me still check on the comments. I see they're coming in from Facebook. Let me try them. Yep, and LinkedIn. Okay, so let's. The next big question I've had is what's my perspective on augmented reality? Is the Apple Vision Pro a revolution, and what is the timing for that to actually filter in to to our day-to-day life. And it's interesting because I'm not actually sure what consensus is in this category. The consensus, there was clearly consensus like a decade ago that virtual reality was going to be the new thing. And we were, at FJ Labs, contrarian on that. We decided or not decided, we analyzed it and we realized, okay, if you take a step back, and before we talk about augmented reality, we looked at the iPhone as a platform, right? So when this came out, this came out in 2007. So when it came out, when was the right time to be building iOS applications if you wanted to be the most successful iOS developer? And if you built applications, mostly games, that were the ones with the best business model in the early days, you did okay, but you didn't actually win the category. The winners in the category, a company called Supercell, which ultimately sold for $10 billion, was created in 2012. They're the maker of Clash of Clans. The reason 2012 was the right time period is in the 5 years since the launch of the iPhone, you had enough penetration, meaning you had already over 100 million users on the platform. One platform with 100 million users. The best practices in monetization, customer acquisition, retention had already been established, and as a result, it was just a question of like applying the best practices into building the best new game, which was Clash of Clans, and that had the runway success we know, and the ultimate exit, I think, to Tencent for $10 billion or so. And so when it came to virtual reality back in the day, I realized there's all these different platforms, from Oculus to PlayStation VR to whatever. None of them had that many sales. Retention looked very low, and the cost was reasonably high, and the quality was actually also reasonably low. When you compare the graphics on your PS5 to the graphics in VR, it felt low. So now let's go to today, augmented reality. Now, if I think through the long-term vision, do I think augmented reality is going to be a platform shift away from this? Absolutely. Spending all your time in this makes no sense, right? Like, this is a limited form factor. You're hunched over. The input-output speed is actually rather limited. And so what you want to be doing instead is actually overlying it with with vision, with your field of vision, and probably controlling it with your thoughts, right? So we're investors in a mind-reading company, or a company called Paradigmics, which puts neural brain interfaces, kind of like Neuralink, if you want. And obviously, right now, we're mostly giving the needs brain surgery targeted at like medical applications for people that have either locked-in syndrome or tetraplegics. And likewise, you want probably glasses that have lasers that are right in your retina, or maybe intelligent contact lenses. And so when you see someone, they'll tell you who they are, the last time you talked to them, what you talked about, who their kids are, etc. And that would be absolutely fantastic. But we are far, far, far from that, right? Apple Vision Pro is very heavy. It costs like $4,000. That's pretty crazy from a pricing perspective. And this is not a mass market product. The history of mass market consumer electronic devices is you need to be at a $300-$400 price point. You can't be at a $4,000 price point. So, of course, is it an early adopter product? Yes. But right now, when I look at people that have it a month in, 2 months in, they actually are not using it on a daily basis. They haven't found that killer app or application. And I think it's because it's too bulky. You look like an asshole doing it, right? The glass holes, if you want. And so I suspect that we're far, far away from that AR revolution. So there will be a platform shift away from cell phones into augmented reality. But given that you want light glasses and light contact lenses and maybe probably mind reading, I could see perhaps eye tracking, perhaps voice, but like, again, speaking to yourself out loud in a public setting is very, very weird. So I suspect that we are a decade away from that platform shift. Maybe more, maybe 20 years away. So sadly, in a way, while I think it will happen, this is a 10, 15, 20 years in the future, and many, many other things will happen before then. So Apple Vision Pro, I suspect, will be deemed a failure in the next few years. In fact, internally at at FJ Labs, we have a bet on how many units will be sold in the next 5 years. And I don't remember exactly what the parameters of it are, but some people were like in the tens of millions, and I'm on the lower end. I'm below whatever threshold some of the other members are. Let's see. We had a few questions come in. I'll pause on the pre-sent questions for a second. So Hamad, sorry if I'm butchering your name. Can you share insights on the key strategies and lessons learned that have contributed most to Alexa's success and growth in the online classifieds market? What was the fundamental inspiration for me to start OLX? So, taking a step back, so I actually bought the domain name OLX back in '98. The first company I built was an eBay for Europe, and I also helped build an eBay for Latin America. I wanted to call it Alibaba, and I actually reached out to this guy in China called Jack Ma to try to buy his domain, and he wisely declined. I didn't realize what he was building, by the way, at the time. And I was going to call the company OLX. And the reason I did not call the company OLX is because I had a competitor called QXL, and they looked too similar. So my first company was called Auckland, and the Latin American one was called Deramate, which became Mercado Libre later. So that journey came to an end. And in a way, it's not a regret, but it would have been better to build the classified site OLX back in '98. It's way easier to build a classified site than to build a transactional site where you need payments and credit cards and auctions and an engine. But I'm not sure I could have raised VC money without having the business model that was embedded and made sense in the eBay experience. If you want to say, hey, I'm doing eBay for other geographies, and that kind of was accepted or acceptable. Now, after my first company, I didn't succeed the way I would have expected to. I built another company in the mobile content space where I did very well. When I sold that in 2004, stayed for 18 months, and in late 2005, I started thinking, okay, let's go back to my true love of marketplaces. I like creating or building liquidity and transparency in markets that are otherwise opaque, and helping users writ large by bringing things they need in their lives and making deflationary and providing these beautiful user experiences. And Craigslist had already come of age. So Craigslist was becoming a force to be reckoned with. They were part of the fabric of society in the US. But clearly, even back in 2005, I mean, even today, the user interface sucked, right? It was a user interface that I felt was already a decade too old in 2005. So I went to Craig and Jim, the CEO and founder, respectively, or the founder and CEO, respectively, of Craigslist, and I said, "Hey, can I help you guys? You guys are doing great public service to humanity, but by not moderating the content, you have all the spam, the scam, this phishing, the prostitution, crime. That's not appropriate. Let me fix that. I'll do it for free. Please let me do it for free. Don't pay me anything. I mean, work for you for a year. If you're not happy with my job, you can fire me. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you're happy, we can discuss after a year whether or not there's a way for me to stay involved." But they did not give me the time of day. And so I'm like, okay, I can do better. And what's best than to compete with someone who doesn't care about competing, doesn't care about winning. And so I decided I wanted to build a better version of Craigslist that was female friendly. You need to remember that women are the primary decision makers in all household purchases. And yet Craigslist was the least female friendly site out there. And, as I said, women are the ones who decide which couch you buy, which house you live in, which car you're driving, which babysitter you're hiring. And so you need to create a very safe environment. I wanted to start getting ready for the mobile revolution. So I wanted a mobile compatible or enabled, female-friendly, super safe, global moderated classified site. Now, I would have liked it to work in the US and the West. So we launched in 100 countries. And because there were already incumbents, like Craigslist said, liquidity didn't take off there. And it ended up taking off in Brazil and India and Pakistan and Portugal. So we went from 100 countries to 4, one there, and then grew. And then from there, used the profits, especially for Brazil, to then grow to the rest of the world. And that's where we ended up with leaders in 30 countries with about 350 million uniques a month and 10,000 plus employees. What are the key strategies and lessons you read most? I think being very thoughtful. So moderating all the content. Nothing goes live unless it's moderated. was definitely a key lesson. Making sure that for fun, let's change a little bit the angle here. Making sure that we match supply and demand very effectively. So we were very good at doing long tail SCM. The people like eBay, they were buying used car. We would buy like used BMW 325 Xi, X thousand miles, what color, and we would pay like a penny a click when everyone else was paying a lot more. So we had a long tail SCM strategy. Because of all content, we had so much SEO. We had a very effective SEO strategy, and we just made sure that the quality of listings was high, and then we always matched supply and demand, such that 20% of the items listed would sell, which is when you have liquidity, and just scale up in parallel. Okay. You give us some context or details on Midas. So Midas is a new company that I recently built. It's a yield-bearing stablecoin. So I've been in crypto since the beginning. I was mining BTC in the early 2010s. I've brought FJ Labs to crypto. We invested in like 100 crypto startups. We were like seed or pre-seed in Animoca and in Figment. We have a liquid crypto strategy where we have like 30 liquid crypto tokens on a long-only strategy. And I've been thinking through what are the companies that we should be building in the crypto space. And I thought actually of a lot of ideas. I wanted to build a one-click consumer-facing staking product. I wanted to build a neobank built on crypto rails, but my friend Gary Gensler disapproved all my ideas, so I didn't launch any, even though I actually fully coded a few. But once rates started going up and it was obvious there was going to be a crypto winter, I'm like, okay, what is the one use case of crypto? And the clear use case of crypto is stablecoins. Stablecoins or a store of value, a means of payment. And even at the bottom of the bear, people are using them, especially outside of the US, in a very effective manner, right? Like if you're in a high inflation country, it's an amazing way to save. If you're in places where there's limited payments or remittances, it's an amazing way to like transact with people. So they have a clear use case, and I'm like, in a non-zero interest rate world, stablecoin should be yield bearing. Now the question was, is there a legal way to do that, given that you're issuing a security token, which is very fundamentally different from the way Tether and Circle or USDC and USDT are legally structured? And turns out the answer is yes. We found a way to be MiFID and MiCA compliant. It's a European regulated company that is basically a stablecoin that is yield bearing. We buy T-bills and we give you the yield. Right now it's 5.23%. Will vary with what the rates are. And if you have stablecoins for any reason, you're waiting for the market to correct before you buy, you're saving in it, etc. There's no reason not to be in a 100% safe, in the sense that it's backed by the US government, T-bill that is yield bearing and making 523 versus 0 if you're just holding USDC and USDT. Gypsan, how are you doing? Well, my question is following. Is there any way for a small retail investor to invest in early financing rounds for startups? If yes, how? There are a few ways to get involved. I think there are a bunch. AngelList, I guess, is probably the main way. And I think on AngelList, as long as you're an accredited investor, there's a whole bunch of options there. Now, I don't think most people should be investing in individual startups because the 5-year survival rate of a startup is 5%. So there's a 95% failure rate. I would invest in, you have two options. Either you invest in a fund, it's pretty differentiated or has enough diversification, or you invest yourself in 50 companies or more. You only do well in this space if you have at least a portfolio of 50 or 100, because then the winners, and because taking a step back, venture follows a power law where a few companies return all the returns, and you want to be in them. And so you want a very diversified portfolio to guarantee that you have good returns. So probably on AngelList, you can find some funds. We at FJ Labs have a friends and family entrepreneurs fund that we do annually, that people can commit to. Again, you need to be an accredited investor. So that's probably the way to get involved. I would avoid most of the crowdfunding sites. The projects there are not really serious. Adam, for a pre-seed round, what should be the GMV to get your attention? Let's say a new marketplace. what GMV would be impressive in first month, 6 month, and 1 year. Taking a step back, a pre-seed round is typically pre-launch, and so there's usually zero GMV. What you need to do though is have the credibility to raise that pre-seed round. Now, pre-seed, there's very few VCs that do pre-seed. It's more friends and family, so it's like full friends and family, and you're raising like, I don't know, 1 million at 3 to 4 pre or 5 pre. The thing is, you don't actually need that much capital these days. These days, it's so cheap to build kind of anything from a tech perspective that even with like 50K, you should be able to get off the ground, etc. Let me answer the question more at the seed round. What do I expect to see the seed round? So the seed round should be kind of 18 months after your launch. And 18 months after your launch, I'm expecting you, kind of depends on your take rate, right? So if you're a B2C and you have a 15% take rate, I'm kind of expecting 150K GMV per month with, let's say, 20% take rate to make the math easy. And that's 30K net revenues. And there you're raising 3 at 9 to 12 free or something like that with good unit economics. And good unit economics is one where you recoup your fully loaded CAC on a net contribution or CM2 basis after 6 months, and you 3x it after 18 months. Now, you haven't been live that long, so it's projections based on early results, on churn, etc., but gives you a sense of that. Now, it's not obvious. If your numbers are not there, that's okay as long as you can justify it. You can say, oh, unit economics are not there, but with scale, cost per delivery goes down, fulfillment cost, whatever. As long as you can rationalize it and you don't need every star, the multiverse to align, that's good. My competitors' take rate is 20 to 30%. I thought that's something more fair, like 10% would be a good start. What the correct take rate is actually really depends on the elasticity of supply and demand in the market and what kind of what are the services and value are you providing? Are you providing enough value to justify 10%? Or are you providing enough value to justify 20 or 30%? Right. So if you're doing money back guarantee and escrow and whatever, delivery, etc., maybe you can justify more. So the answer, of course, of what the correct take rate is it depends. You need to figure out what the elasticity of supply and demand is and understand what value you're providing. As long as you're providing a lot of value to one or both sides of the marketplace, there's usually not too much risk of disintermediation. So that's basically it. Okay, let me pause here, see if everything else is. What are the questions that come in elsewhere? Okay. Pause. Up. So, other questions that were submitted while we wait for more questions to be coming in from the audience. What are my current perspectives on the crypto market? So what's interesting is we kind of read the crypto markets correctly because we read the macro correctly. In February 2021, I wrote this blog post entitled Welcome to the Everything Bubble, where I said that because of overly loose fiscal and monetary policy, all asset classes were correlating one on the way up. And I meant all asset classes. I mean, SPACs, NFTs, crypto, real estate, bonds, equities, privates, you name it. And so I said, if it's not anchored to the ground, sell it. And of course, we ate our own dog food. We listened to our own strategy. We sold as much as we could. Of course, it's a private market in the VC world, so we sold less than we would have liked to, maybe like 10% of what we would have liked to, but still did better than most. But the obvious conclusion was when rates go up, because crypto is actually deemed, really is a risk asset, it's the ultimate risk asset, would fall dramatically, and there would be a crypto winter. In fact, it's that insight that led me to launch the Midas as an idea that we're working with a bear market and a bull market. And so we sold all of our liquid crypto in November 21 or early 22. We did secondaries of some of our crypto companies that were private, did really well. Now, the corollary to that is in 23, we're like, okay, there is a moment in the future where market conditions are going to change. There are fundamental use cases for a decentralized ledger and for Web3. Their interest rates are going to fall. And as even if we're only talking about like the store value of a BDC, given that it might get approved at some point with a BDC ETF, there's probably a change in sentiment that's coming. So in 23, we actually started going long pretty aggressively. Actually, I think we started in 22, but in 23 and seeing a turn. So again, you want to be can't time the market, but you want to be contrarian. When everyone else is buying, you want to be selling. When everyone else is selling, you want to be buying. And so we started going long, and of course, have done extraordinarily well. Things have moved faster than I expected, I have to admit. Interest rates have not started falling yet, and yet the market is doing really well. And usually in these types of markets, regardless of underlying value, there's a buy the rumor, sell the news. And so I'm like, oh, as the BDC ETF is approved, maybe that would have been a time to sell. And it turns out that the ETF inflows, or the capital inflows from the ETF have been so high that they buoyed the entire market. So this market run largely has been driven by input of massive liquidity in the crypto market because of the ETF on Bitcoin. And when you think about where we are in that cycle, we're still at the very beginning. What's happening is it's completely programmatic, meaning one fund will say 1% of my assets will be BDC. And as their AUM goes up, they just buy more and more BDC. So they're not even doing an analysis. What is the correct value, et cetera? It's automatically bought or sold to be a percentage of their funds. And as more and more funds put BDC as part of their assets under management, it'll increase the inflows. Now, a lot of that has happened. A lot of expectation of that has happened. The question is, how far do we go from there? And the good news is we're now seeing real applications as well in crypto beyond purely just speculation. And I'd say we're mid-innings of this run. Now, there's likely a correction. There's always corrections in the middle of bull runs. And so there may very well be a correction in April and May of this year, given how fast things have run prior to real unit economics, business, and transactions happening. Nonetheless, I think we're in the middle of the run. What could lead to the next big run in the crypto market, in the crypto cycle, beyond sort of decreasing in decrease in US rates, is actually an ETH ETF. Now, people were optimistic that an ETH ETF would be approved in May. I think the probability of that is low. I'd say 30% or less, and probably less than 50% for even the August approval. But probably over 50% in 2025 at some point, maybe Q2 or Q3. If, and ideally when, an ETH ETF gets approved, I think this launches a massive bull run in ETH. Frankly, probably even in Solana, like the two L1s that are winning, and all the applications that are on them. And so I suspect that 25 will, if and when that happens, it'll be a massive bull run in the other assets other than BDC. Now, of course, BDC, we're about to have the halving, et cetera, but that'll be the main inflection point because obviously US rate decreases have already been expected in a way. So if they started happening, that wouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. As I said, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a 20, 30, 40% correction. We might be already in the middle of it in the next few months. But I still think we're mid-innings in this run. Okay, let's go to the questions back from the audience. Adam, can you invite you to intro.co? Any of us would pay good money for an hour of your time. Many experts who don't need money donate to charities anyway. Maybe I like doing these types of interactions on a platform like this one here because it's one to many and it brings scalability to my time. Doing one-on-one with people, the opportunity cost of my time is very high. Like the thing that I've most limited in my life is actually my time, and that's why I spent so much time optimizing for it. Like that's why I have an army of virtual assistants in the Philippines. And general help structure such that I can only do the things that I value. So unlikely that I'd be up for being in a platform like that, just because I can't imagine the amount of money you'd have to pay me for 1 hour of my time to make it worth my time, right? Like I don't know, 5,000 an hour, 10,000. Like it's so high as to be ridiculous that I don't think anyone should be willing to pay it. So I guess the answer is no. I don't think it makes sense. Does FJ Labs have an activist approach when investing in startups? how are you supporting the founders? It's funny because I misinterpreted what you meant by activists. So here's the thing. We are not on the board. We don't lead. We don't price. We don't take board seats. And yet, most founders we work with believe we are the most helpful partners and investors they have. And the reason is as follows. Other people like whatever, Firstmark and Andreessen, they're amazing. They have these huge portfolio teams where they're going to have like whatever, recruiters and headhunters and psychologists and executive coaches. We don't have the assets under management or AUM to support any of that. So we don't do any of that. There's one thing we will help you with, and we are fantastic at it. That is our superpower. We will help you raise. 6 months before you raise, we want to review your deck, review your metrics, tell you how you're doing, whether we think you're ready, identify the VCs you should talk to, make the intros to those VCs, and then back channel on how it's going. Now, if we don't think you're ready, we'll also tell you that we'll not make the intro. So we give full transparency to everyone, and we'll make the intros for the top 33% or top quartile of the portfolio to the best VCs. Now, the reason this works, despite the fact we have 1,100 companies in our portfolio, is we only need to talk to you once a year. I mean, we expect to get monthly or quarterly reports, but once a year, you're only raising once a year. So once a year, as you get ready to raise, this is when we come in. We have an amazing operating partner. His name is Jeff Berger. He's essentially the head of portfolio or platform, and he's the one who's basically helping the board. He's a former founder, very successful, very thoughtful as a result, and he's the one helping with all this. And he's a quarterback, and then he calls me or the other partners like Jeff, Jose, or Arnie to make the interest of the right VCs at the right time. So we are extraordinarily supportive of the founders. We can also have conversations on strategy, exit, etc. But those are ad hoc. You need to make the effort. Hey, Fabrice, I have this issue or question. What do you think? And I will answer 100% reply rate for sure. But we're not going to be proactively seeking you out to see if we can help, except fundraising. Now, the funny thing is in 2021, people thought our superpower was useless because money was like free and infinite. Now, it is extraordinarily helpful. Raising capital is extremely hard unless you're an AI. And we are extremely helpful to companies in that regard. And also extremely thoughtful because we know what the market conditions are. And sometimes founders don't really have a sense of what that reality is. Let's go back to a few of the questions that were pre-submitted ahead of time, making sure I've covered them. DC. Actually, sticking for a second to the question on crypto. Question that was just asked is there going to be a fiat currency crisis where the dollar will be replaced? Will something like, I don't know, USDC or USDT or frankly BTC become the reserve currency? So the answer is there will be a fiat currency crisis, but not in the near term, right? Like there's no real alternative. BTC is not a good alternative currency because it's deflationary in nature, which has a whole bunch of negative implications. And when you think of like how strong currency or how effective a currency is, it's kind of related to the alternative. And right now, if you look at the U.S. fiscal position, not great. We have massive fiscal deficits, which makes our budget deficits unsustainable. But it's actually better than Europe. It's better. We don't have the capital controls and the lack of flexibility of let's say you'd have in China with the yuan. And so on a relative basis, the dollar remains actually the reserve currency du jour. So I don't see that changing in any way, shape, or form in the next decade now. Do you want to diversify your holdings and have different types of assets, et cetera? Yes, but do I see a run on the dollar anytime soon? No. Now, and also, sadly, humans suck at solving issues ahead of time. They only will respond to fixing things when there's a crisis. But the problems with the U.S. fiscal position are actually reasonably easily solvable, right? Like right now we have way too many guaranteed spending and the budget and entitlement spending, I could solve it probably 30 seconds from a sentence perspective. Like if you move all retirement from defined benefit to defined contribution, both in the public sector and the private sector, you index the retirement age to life expectancy, and you increase it to whatever 70. Life expectancy being a lot higher today than it is than it was when Social Security was first introduced. And if you adjust the cost of living adjustments, or the inflation definition for cost of living adjustments marginally to decrease it a tiny bit, which actually could be totally reasonable because there are different definitions of inflation, you can actually solve the fiscal budget problem easily in a way. In 20, 30 years, it's completely addressed. But humans suck at doing things ahead of time, especially when the costs are in future generations and future politicians. We're the ones who don't want to bear that pain. And so I suspect we will have to wait for a crisis of confidence in the dollar for the fiscal position to be addressed. But it is solvable and it will be addressed. In the meantime, because it's still a stronger position, relatively speaking, to the other currencies, I don't see a crisis of confidence happening here. Okay, let me open a few more questions. Have you decided on your next adventure for outdoor travel that you'd like to tackle? It's a personal question, and I guess it's related to the fact that I had a big adventure in Antarctica a year ago, where I walked, pulling my 100-pound sled in like -50 with wind chill for 2 weeks to the South Pole, which was a big adventure. I guess my current big adventure is being a new parent. I have a 1-month-old baby. Her name is Emily, and she's wonderful. And she's not as portable as kids will be when they're a little bit older. So Fafa, my 2.5-year-old son, I can put him in a sling and we go hiking and mountain biking and skiing, etc. Can't quite do that with Emily just yet. When she's a bit older, I have a lot of adventures planned. I was thinking of snow kiting across Greenland. I want to go swimming with the orcas in Norway. I haven't explored Southeast Asia much, so I want to actually go camping, hiking, completely off grid in Southeast Asia, in Tasmania, in Australia, none of which I've done, mostly because of time differences and how far it is. You need to really schedule the time around it. Probably not happening in 24, 25, but yeah, 26 onwards. I haven't been heli skiing or in backcountry skiing in Kashmir yet. I've been invited to do it in Pakistan and in the Himalayas writ large as well, in addition to obviously India. So probably that's on the to-do list. Yeah, I'm sure there are many more adventures to come. So, but nothing just now. Right now, the big adventure is being a new parent. Adam, I've heard that startups should recoup their fully loaded customer acquisition costs within 6 months based on contribution margin, and then triple the amount. You confirm these numbers are accurate. These numbers are accurate, because think of what it is we want to be doing as VCs. As VCs, we want to be funding your growth. And so once you have a customer acquisition channel that works, it doesn't matter which one it is. It could be word of mouth. It could be a CM, it could be a sales team, really irrelevant. As long as you have one that works and is replicable, and it's just putting gasoline on the fire, then that's fantastic. And we want to fund that with good unit economics. And by the way, the way you know your marketplace that works is if your customer acquisition cost goes down over time because the network effects are kicking in and through word of mouth and more organic and ever more buyers are bringing ever more sellers, and more sellers are bringing ever more buyers. And so and again, you don't necessarily need to be there, meaning there may be in the early days, the economics may not be as good as long as you can justify why they will get better with time as your take rate goes up, as your pricing power increases, etc. Rafi, what should the first 3-6 months of a new startup look like? Talk to potential customers, generate demand, build prototype, validate hypotheses. I would do a lot of that before actually launching a startup. So before I decide to go it all in, I would do the homework. So let me check on my blog which episode it is. I think it's episode 9 or 10. 1 second, I will refer to it in a second. So episode 9 of Playing with Unicorns is how to come up with startup ideas in the 3 core ways, like solving a problem you're facing, personally, bringing an idea from one country to another, or bringing a model or an approach from one category to another. Probably the 3 main ways. But then you need to validate that it's going to work. And so I would talk to at least 50 customers on the supply and demand side ahead of time. I would do a landing page analysis. So you don't build a website. You just build a landing page that looks beautiful. You buy whatever your sales approach is, whether it's sales team or Google or Facebook ads, send traffic there, get a sense where the CPCs look like, look at the density of keywords. How much people could you actually buy if you had enough money? And look at what the sign-up rate is. Talk to these people and try to get a sense of what the conversion rate will look like. And you can estimate usually what the conversion rate in the industry is and estimate something similar to that. This is the way you really validate the hypothesis. Once you've validated, there's a market, there's a need, the solution to build is the following one. And so you have like a checklist. This is episode 10 on Playing the Unicorns, which is validating your startup idea. And once you've met all the checklists, then you go and you build a prototype and you launch. And then the first 6 months is actually about proving out that what you thought was true, getting the scale you want, and getting it to get to the point where you can raise your seed round. Adam, does FJ Labs have an anti-portfolio? We should have one. So we do have one kind of the back of our head rather than explicitly on the website, but we could totally have one. There are 2 mistakes, I guess, in venture. You can make, I guess, 3 types of mistakes. Errors of omission, meaning you didn't invest in a company you should have invested in. That's probably the anti-portfolio. Errors of commission, you invested in a company you should not have invested in. And then errors on selling, and you sold at the wrong time. You sold too late, too early, etc. We are, like every VC in the world, guilty of all 3. We failed to invest in amazing companies you should have invested in, or at like the right time. When I saw the Uber reasonably late, I passed in the first few rounds because the unit economics were not there. At first, it was really a rich guy problem. It's like, oh, we're rich people and we want to share this black car. And then it was like literally shared series and whatever, Mercedes S600 for 12 people. To then, oh, we're a black car service using other people's cars, so you know the black cars. Again, felt an elitist problem. To then starting to work a bit better. And then I saw Uber at the 2 billion round. And the mistake I made, and I love the team, I love the product, I loved everything, except I looked at the numbers and it was like doing 100 million GMV, 18 million net revenues, losing 18 million a month. And I'm like, ugh. I'm losing 18 million a month. It's not that hard to build a company making 18 million in revenues. How do I justify 2 billion valuation? So I wrote my investment memo by saying, I think I will regret this decision for the rest of my life. But having looked at the numbers, we can't invest in this round. Now, of course, if you write an investment memo starting with, I will regret this decision for the rest of my life, you know you're wrong. Should have followed my gut and should have invested. This is one example. But another one in gaming, could have invested at the very beginning of Zynga. I think might have even been a 1 million pre-money valuation. And I'm like, gaming's, it's going to grow both in Facebook and in mobile. But in the long run, gaming becomes hit-driven, costs go up, competition goes up, customer acquisition go up, retention goes down. It's not going to be great. And that analysis is correct. But in the meantime, you can still build a $10 billion business. So, whoops. Sold too early, Tencent. I was an early investor in Tencent. They went public, and I'm like, Chinese penetration at that time was like 6%. It was obviously going to go to 95%. But in the US, ICQ, AIM, or MSN Messenger, I think ICQ sold for 270 million. So I'm like, Tencent is worth 400 million. Even at high max penetration, how much is that really worth? And so I sold everything. And then I looked at it for fun. I remember the ticker is 700 at HK 10 years later or 15 years later. And I'm like, this can't be right. Like, I can't be the same company. And of course, that $400 million company became a $500 billion behemoth. I probably left $200 million on the table. Like, if only I not sold. So what we changed in our philosophy there is we no longer sell everything. We typically sell 50% when we think it's overvalued. Because if it goes to zero, we sold 50%, we made 5, 10x, whatever, we're happy. And if the rest goes through the moon, great. So if it goes to zero, we're happy. We sell, and if it goes to infinity, we're happy as well. Martin, do you have any thoughts on the longevity industry? Do you think platforms like Hims or Rogue will evolve in that direction, or will there be a new player? So longevity, of course, is a hot topic, and there's a lot of improvements being made. In fact, we invested in a studio/incubator building biotech longevity startups. So the company is called Cambrian. It's created by James Payer. It's absolutely amazing. He's absolutely amazing and extremely bullish on the category. Now, I think that I can see the Hims and the Row going in that direction, as long as there are established protocols for what to do. And I guess there's a set of supplements you can take, etc. Now, the reason unclear to me that that's the solution. And I mean, maybe there's I can see Hims and Row going to like whatever GPT-1 inhibitors for obesity. But longevity is so many multifaceted, right? If you look at what Brian Johnson does, and I do a lot of that stuff as well, right? Like from intermittent fasting to red light therapy to cold plunges to etc. A lot of it is also not just medical or supplementation. And then there's the supplements you can take. So it's going to take, I don't know. I suspect that when new companies will emerge. I can think of a few buckets. Bucket one, longevity spas, if you want, like One Medical for longevity, where you go in and it's a combination of like whatever sauna, cryo, nutritionist, red light therapy, etc. There'll be that's one. Number two, supplementation type company and or medicine type company. So the Hims and Rogue can play there, and there might be new startups as well that build legitimacy. I'm trying right now a product called enda.co to replace all the supplements I'm taking, like vitamin D and omega-3s, etc. And then biotech, like actual new development. And the way the biotech companies are approaching it right now is many of the diseases that humans face are driven actually by or driven by aging. So cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, they're all driven by aging. And so even though they're creating drugs to attack these, in a way they're indirectly attacking aging. So definitely a lot of companies were going to emerge in that category as well, and very bullish on the opportunities here. And our improvement in knowledge is increasing. I mean, think of it. We're all wearing these smart watches with all this data. Currently, the medical profession doesn't use them at all. So functional medicine is becoming way more relevant, and it's coming of age. Adam, I've listed things that I heard you consider when rating a startup. Team, unit economics, fair deal terms, reasonable valuation. Is it beneficial for the world, aligning the general direction of global trends, offering new opportunities to those with fewer opportunities? Is there anything else? So is it beneficial to the world? I see three big problems today that I'm trying to address. One is inequality of opportunity. Can we make things cheaper and available to all? The good news is I think the technology revolution writ large is mostly geared towards doing that. No founder just wants to build a problem or solution for the 0.1%. Maybe, yes, when you release a cell phone, it's only available to Gordon Gekko. But ultimately, you want everyone to have it and make things as widely distributed as possible, as cheap as possible. So the concern to me has always been about cheaper, better, faster, and inequality of opportunity is mostly being addressed by that. Number two, climate change. And then number three, the mental and physical well-being crisis. And actually, on the physical side, the longevity stuff falls here, and then well-being side, probably the combination of like the mental health startups and the psychedelic startups probably fall there. But no, these are the core categories. I mean, I think of it as like, yeah, team, business, which is TAM and unit economics, deal terms, and mission, and is this something I care about? Cuddlehead, what build did I play at Elden Ring? Because I'm not as good at the demon at the Souls games as others. I played the easy class. I mean, there's no difficulty setting, right? It's all reasonably hard. But by being an astrologer and just shooting from afar and not fighting head on, I was able to finish Elden Ring. That was my 2022 project. And I played with my brother, and my brother is a samurai. And so the two of us together as a tag team, me shooting for him up front, worked really, really well. I'm actually very excited for Elden Ring's expansion to come out in a few months. And I'm sure we'll be playing a lot. In 23, I finished Ragnarok, and now I'm playing Helldivers 2 in co-op with my brother and friends, and we're having a blast. I still play Age of Empires 4 for fun on the PC. Did you have any mentor in your angel investor career? If yes, who is it, and how does the person help you? So I didn't really have mentors in general. Growing up in France in the 80s, where there was Minitel and no PCs, I looked up to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, who were building the tech revolution, but I didn't know them. They were not mentoring me directly. Angel investing. I started angel investing when I first became a founder. I became a founder in 98, and immediately, because I was visible to the world as a thoughtful, successful, consumer-facing internet entrepreneur, I immediately started being approached by people saying, can you invest in my startup? And I actually thought long and hard. So, of course, there were not really angel investors back then. I was starting from nothing. And so I started thinking through, okay, should I be angel investing? Because, of course, it's a distraction from being my mission of being a CEO, founder of startup. And ultimately, I argued the following. If I can explain lessons learned to others, it means I've internalized them and makes me a better founder. And if I can keep my fingers on the pulse of the market by meeting all these founders, especially in marketplaces, I'm running a horizontal multi-category site. If I can meet all these vertical founders, and then it makes me a better founder. So as long as I decide very quickly, so back in 98, I created this 4 selection criteria, and the way I would evaluate startups, which is still, frankly, the same one I'd use today. So in a 1-hour meeting, I would decide if I invest or not. I'm like, it's okay. So I didn't have any mentors in angel investing. I don't have mentors in VC. I would describe myself as an accidental VC. I'm definitely an accidental VC. I when I sold OLX in 2013, I like building companies, I like investing companies. I partnered with my angel investing partner, Jose, and we built FJ Labs really as a family office for us to be angel investing and building companies. And that took a life of its own. And other people said, hey, we want exposure to what you're doing. Can we invest with you? And that's why we became a VC. But we're not a real VC, a normal VC. I mean, again, we have our portfolio for each fund is like 500 startups, and we decide in 2 1-hour meetings if we invest. I think I would describe what we do as angel investing at venture scale. We're angel investors. We just happen to have the capital deployment capability of normal VCs. But yeah, we're angel investors. What is the most? Are you tempted to invest in AI? Again, if I see a project where it's vertical, proprietary data set, clear monetization path, and the valuation is reasonable, it falls in the norm, then yes. But everything I'm seeing is not that. It's like crazy valuations, like super bubbly when non-differentiated. So and by the way, I would argue everything I do is every company I invest in has AI. Everyone's using AI. Everyone's building an AI. They're not AI companies, but they're using AI. So every investment I do, I would say, is an AI investment person, though it's not marketed as such. So not tempted in doing the game of game of kings like OpenAI versus whatever Mistral versus others, and not tempted either. I mean, if 10 years, if I'd invested at the beginning, sure, but I mean, and even then, the way they're structured, et cetera, is odd. We're also playing it indirectly. We're investors in an amazing company called Figure. Figure is making these humanoid robots where they want to replace pickers and packers in Amazon last mile warehouses, for instance. And they're embedding OpenAI's AI to interact with the real world. So they're also kind of an AI company. It's the most overused buzzword that you can't stand. I think it varies, right? Like whatever is, it used to be ESG. Maybe for a while it was crypto, like in the last bubble. Right now, I'm sure it's AI. Right? It has to be AI. Everything's AI. Every company's saying they're doing something in AI, and most of the large companies are not, right? So it's not true. Just seem when valuation of a company is risky yet a bit safe and worth the squeeze. It's not, the valuation in its own is not sufficient. It's the combination of valuation and traction and team and opportunity. And so when I invest, and I invest at all stages, pre-seed, seed, A, B, etc., it has to be fair. Nothing's cheap in tech. It has to be fair in light of traction, opportunity, team. And I have a blog post on my valuation matrix where I talk about what are the median valuations at pre-seed, seed, A, B, and onwards based on traction, and the fair valuation is there. Lacey, hi Fabrice. Any particular places or people you prefer to keep up with your biohealth updates? And thanks for your time today. Obviously, the well-known people are Huberman or Pete Attia. Honestly, I don't follow their podcasts or listen where they say it's just too much content and they're too long and too slow. I'd rather have a synopsis of it through my personal functional medicine doctor. You can read the last Pete Attia book. So he first wrote, I think, Lifespan or Longevity. Let me find the name of the book. Recently read it, so but I've read 20 books since then. So give me a second. Let me find the name of the book. If I recall correctly, it's Pete Attia's book. Yes, Outlive: The Science and Art of Longevity. And there's a good sense of like what it is you should be doing in there that makes sense. Adam, what is a surprisingly cheap and effective marketing channel? Some people have mentioned that LinkedIn can be effective if used correctly. Elon Musk has stated that ads on X tend to over-deliver. I'd say TikTok probably is if your audience is young, you can have in two ways. A, you can create content on TikTok that reaches a large audience quickly and inexpensively, and B, you can buy ads there. They're also inexpensive and effective, but depends what you're selling, right? Like, as always, the answer on what is the right channel for you is it depends, right? If you're selling high-end B2B SaaS software, TikTok is definitely not what you're going to be selling that. So but yeah, TikTok's rather effective. No beautiful new channels coming up. And so the traditional channels work. They become less effective because of the Apple removing the tracking. So CACs have gone up on both Facebook and Google, but nonetheless, you can still usually make economics work if you have the right business. Okay, Jesse, as an investor, does it make sense to look for opportunities other than AI, even though AI is hot now? Yeah, absolutely. I think right now you want to be contrarian in general. You don't want to be investing in AI when everyone else is investing in AI. So when everyone was doing crypto in the last bubble, I sold everything, and in 2023 I bought everything. I started buying again, and now I'm rebalancing the portfolio based on lessons learned. AI, I'm not investing in AI explicit companies because the valuations are insane, and ultimately, do I think there's a real business? At the end of the day, When a company is going to be valued at exit in either by an acquirer or by a by the stock market, it'll be net present value of future discounted cash flows. And I need to be able to see that in differentiation. And right now, all these companies are raising insane amounts of money with no business model and no differentiation. So I do everything else. What I'm mostly focusing on right now is digitizing B2B supply chains because, and it's extraordinarily boring, but so profoundly important. In the consumer world, you have these amazing user experiences. You have Airbnb, you have Uber, you have DoorDash, you order on Amazon, you get anything in a day or two. I mean, it's glorious. And then you go to the business world and you can't order anything online. You have no pricing, no availability, etc. Penetration in B2B is sub 1% in most categories. And it's definitely sub 5%. So we have infinite and trillions of dollars of GDP. We have an infinite way to run. So you need to digitize all inputs. That's a massive category. You need to do SMB enablement. So we're at the we're at the very, very, very beginning. And so I think this is more interesting and deflationary, and it's going to revolutionize the world, and it's going to run for 20 years. Martine, what are the most incredible business opportunities you have seen in preventative health? So preventive health is fundamentally important, right? It's also a lot cheaper than fixing problems. What is the biggest opportunity? Unclear to me. Also, you need to realize it's not what I focus on. I'm interested in longevity out of intellectual curiosity, but I like asset-light businesses, and that's why I'm not personally building or investing in biotech type companies. The GPT-1 inhibitors, obviously, like Ozempic, are the ones that have won and or been the most helpful in the category here. And I would argue they are preventative because they're helping you address all the comorbidity disease factors that go with obesity, right? Obesity is correlated with everything from cancer to heart disease, et cetera, diabetes. So not sure where the opportunities lie. I haven't spent that much time thinking about it. But clearly I would like that to exist. Adam, can you name successful blockchain-based marketplaces that work with goods other than NFTs? So for NFTs, we're investors in Blur. For non-NFTs, no, but I'm not sure that's also the main use case, right? Like for transacting real-world assets in the blockchain, you need a reason for it. Like, do I want a blockchain? Like, does having a decentralized ledger that is open and public bring value? And I think for most things, the answer is no. The one thing that I like to do to bring on is actually the real world assets I want to bring online. So it's not the lending protocol. It's not like centrifuge, stuff like that. Is actually traditional finance. That's why Midas is bringing T-bills on chain. And in the long run, I want to bring bonds, equities, and everything else. And the reason is the way our traditional financial system works is completely ridiculous. So, like, if you want to buy stocks or sell stocks, you go to your bank, they contact a broker, they work with the custodian, right? Like, there's so many levels of intermediary. If you're selling a stock, you're selling a Tesla stock, it'll settle in 2 or 3 days. And the markets are only open during business hours. That makes no sense. So if there's something I would like to bring on chain from a marketplace perspective, it's for traditional financial assets. And so Midas, which is bringing T-bills on chain because it's a $30 trillion category, and it's also the easiest way to do from a legal perspective, though we're not in the US yet. I'm working on a US strategy. I want to bring bonds and possibly equities on chain as well, and these types of assets. So to me, that's the real world assets I want to bring on chain rather than goods. I don't need an eBay on chain. There is value in the what the central authorities do, right? Like DAOs are not an effective governance structure. People are using DAOs for legal reasons, right? Like, and no founder has ever said, "Oh, I would like to have decentralized voting in the community to decide." Every founder is like, founders want to be enlightened dictators. They may or may not be enlightened, but they want to basically be able to decide and move quickly. The reason they use DAOs and they use decentralized structures is because many of these DeFi companies or if they were not or illegal. I mean, they're violating U.S. securities law, and so they're being decentralized to just be a software protocol to not be violating U.S. securities law. But that's not actually the way they would like to be structured. And so, do I think there is value in the centralization? Like Airbnb provides extraordinary value in terms of like filtering the spam and the scam and doing customer care and giving you money back, insurance on your property, etc. So a completely decentralized version that didn't have these things probably wouldn't work. It wouldn't make that much sense. So, but for financial assets, they make the most sense. So I absolutely want to bring financial assets on chain. It'll be a few years because my friend Gary at the SEC doesn't necessarily agree with a lot of these ideas, and I think the banks are also the incumbents or don't want to be disrupted. But definitely the area that I'm the most excited about in general in the crypto space. Jassim, I definitely feel new fan, especially these ages of shiny object syndrome. Not all, by many. Well, that's always been true. Uber for X is a big trend. Like everyone wants to go to the new thing, whatever the new thing is, and I don't blame them. And if you can do something meaningful and powerful in AI, it's extraordinarily, it's amazing. I'm most talking from the approach of as an investor. I actually think it also is true of the investors. The investors are all chasing the new thing. They're all like lemmings, right? Like, oh, this is hot, whatever this may be, and they all follow it at the same time. VR for a while, then whatever, Uber for X, or and now it's AI. But you really want to be contrarian, and it's okay as a founder to want to do something that's meaningful, as long as it and that's exciting, etc. Just understand why you're doing it. You're doing it because you think it's a get rich quick scheme. Probably not the right motivation. If it's something that you're like, oh my god, this is funnily exciting and interesting, and I can spend the rest of my life doing it, go for it. Regarding Figure, when is your opinion we'll see humanoid robots in our daily lives? 3 years, 5 years, 20 years? 20 years. Humanoid robots, well, so Adam, the question is, as usual, is it depends what you mean by seeing them in daily lives. We will see them in like warehouses before and in factories before we see them in your household. The issue with household is like so many different variables that need to account in terms of like, pets, people to run into, activities that it can do, etc. So the Jetsons future, I don't see in the next 5 years. Robots becoming way more commonplace in our lives, and we will see them because they will be interacting in factories. I could see it in 5 years. And I mean humanoid robots. Robots are already present or omnipresent. Like you go to car manufacturers, it's all robots. But humanoid robots in warehouses, 5 years I think will become more and more common, but not in our daily lives. So daily lives still too expensive, right? Like too expensive, use case too limited, doesn't work particularly well just yet. So more 15, 20 years is probably better. By the way, same thing with self-driving cars. We're getting closer on autonomy. Do I think in the next 5 years all cars will be full self-driving? Absolutely not. So it will start gradually. It'll be like, trucks on highways for long distances, and little by little start expanding. And we're finally on the cusp. So, another example, by the way, the hype cycle, speaking of AI, when self-driving started becoming a thing 10 years ago, or even 12 years ago, everyone's like, it's going to happen in the next 5 years. And now we've reached so that was a peak of the hype cycle. Now we're probably at the bottom of the valley of disappointment and despair, where everyone's like, it's never going to happen. And actually now I think it's starting to becoming interesting. We're now getting the point where the cost and effectiveness is such, or efficacy is such, that we're going to start seeing interesting use cases. So all that to say, this is now becoming an interesting time to look at it and think through the implications and considerations. Again, you want to be contrarian. So I suspect something similar might happen in AI in a few years. We'll be like, oh my God, why is it not showing up in the productivity statistics? Why is it not being implemented by big companies, etc.? Cuddlehead, do you think asteroid mining is an industry that will become feasible or profitable within our lifetime? Don't know enough about this to be able to opine effectively. Obviously, I can think through what the economics of it look like. It's like, what is the cost of like getting into space, so the cost of mining, bringing it back versus the value of the minerals. The answer is I could see it possibly be yes as an answer, because the cost of going to space is declining dramatically, and of course should decline dramatically if Starship is successful, and if we can launch Starship type launchers at scale that are reusable at very large capacity. I could see it happen. I haven't done the math though. If Starship is cheap enough to actually make asteroid mining cost effective, but I don't think it would be all that hard to calculate actually. If you so, I think in 30 minutes you can probably answer that question from it. But feasible, right? Cost of launches declining all the time and will continue to decline. So these things are moving slower than we would like them to. Elon is notoriously optimistic on his projections, but that's okay. I think all founders are notoriously optimistic on their projections. And but do I think the launches, reusable launches, will keep increasing in frequency and lowering in cost? Absolutely. Okay, let's go back to a few other questions that were submitted ahead of time. Let's see. We continue to see economic sentiment down given the cost of money felt by consumers. Curious, given how you also touched the dire U.S. consumers in your macroeconomic update, where you see bright spots in the landscape. So I kind of touched upon this briefly at the beginning. The economic environment has actually been more resilient than I would have expected it to be. I expected a recession in 23 because a combination of the debt levels of the consumer side would be very high. Inflation is still be at that time reasonably high. Rates impacting, especially commercially real estate, a lot, and a number of banks falling, decreasing overall lending, and basically a massive movement of capital away from banks into T-bills because they're safer and higher yielding, which is leading to bank lending to collapse. And so when you put all these together, and then like just geopolitical uncertainty and a few other factors, of like I would have expected a recession, and yet the consumer has been extraordinarily resilient. And currently we still have full employment, unemployment is inflation has decreased, and productivity statistics are shockingly good. Usually tech productivity doesn't show up. So people have been saying, where's the productivity from the tech revolution in the statistics? And I don't think you're ever going to see it, honestly, because tech is deflationary, right? Like if tech makes something free, it's calculated as a decrease in GDP. So if a $2,000 computer next year becomes a $1,500 computer or a $1,000 computer when it's sold, that's a decrease in GDP, even though it's a better computer for cheaper. And so I think a lot of the, most of the things, not most of the things we consume online from Google to Facebook are free. There's a trade-off where you give up your data in exchange for having access free to a free service. And all these things are not, or don't show up in the productivity stats. So I'm actually I'm more optimistic than I was in the macro environment. And we may very well have this notorious soft landing. So back in the last 70 years, we've only had one soft landing where the Fed engineered a slowdown of the economy that was overheating because of high inflation without a recession. And that was in 93, 94. Every other time when rates rose, we had a big recession, or a recession, not always a big one. Big one if you raise a lot, like in 82, 83, when Volcker raised rates. And we've had the biggest increase in rates since then, and ever except for then, basically. And it looks like, shockingly enough, and to my surprise, but actually pleasant surprise, we are going to have this very rare unicornish soft landing. So actually rather optimistic on the general global macro. Now there's still massive political and geopolitical risk that kind of acts as a Damocles sword overall, but things are looking better than I would have expected. and it looks like we're navigating issues like commercial real estate crisis, etc. Whom do you think had the most impact in your investing thesis? Honestly, no one. What we do is really profoundly different. I never, I never did an analysis saying what is the best strategy for investing. It was really bottoms up. It was like I see a company, I see a founder, I like him, I invest. I don't like him, I don't invest. It's literally that simple. It's a bottoms up approach, not a top down. I didn't do a top down. What are the lessons learned from the most successful funds in history from a venture perspective? And our strategy is completely different. Now, the data supports the strategy we're following. So AngelList is a lot of data on what are the most successful investing strategies. And it just so happens that a diversified strategy is by far the most successful strategy. But it's an accident of history that my angel investing strategy, which became more angel investing at venture scale in FJ Labs, is the correct strategy, and that I like diversification because my intellectual curiosity pushes me to like diversification. I like meeting a lot of founders. The world has so many problems, and each of them needs to be fixed by various, climate change is on one problem. It's emissions at a cement plant or at cars. It's 1,000 little problems, and founders want to solve one sub niche, and I want to help all of them solve all of the world's problems. And so as a result, my intellectual curiosity is making me be a diverse investor, and it just so happens that it's very successful. But it wasn't top down, it wasn't thought through, and there was no real inspiration. It just happened to be that. Is there something you've seen in recent startup pitches that you think the general public should know? I'll approach this differently. Many people are like, everything that needs to be done. I wish I'd been building a startup 20 or 30 years ago, because then what needed to be built was obvious. We're still at day one. We're still at the very beginning of the technical revolution. Even in the consumer-facing world, we're at 20, 25% penetration at best in most categories. So that it still has 3-4x to go or more in some cases. And in the B2B, we're at the very beginning. And even things that have incumbents can be reinvented with new business models, new approaches, etc. So in marketplaces, the old way of running marketplaces was you say what you're looking for, people apply, and then they converse. You go to Upwork, you get hundreds of applications, you interview them, you pick one. Extraordinarily, a huge amount of work. Now the new way is you just say what you need, and the marketplace says this is the person for you. Done. This allows you to reinvent a lot of verticals, a lot of categories, a lot of ideas. So this will be common, or I guess all this to say, we're still at the very beginning of the technology revolution. This is still the place to be. There's nowhere else that you're going to be able to impact as many people on such a large scale and actually move the needle for millions of people in the world. And everything remains to be done. In fact, nothing has been done yet. And so still the best time to be a tech founder, to be a tech investor, and to be in this category. Gonzalo, when it comes to crypto, how game-changing do you consider the ETFs to be going forward? Kind of answered this already, but I'll recap very briefly. The BTC ETF was key because of the inflows that it brought, and they're still bringing, is actually igniting interest in the space, right? The reason we're in the middle of a new bull run is because of the BTC ETF. That inflows have been much greater than expected and will continue to come because it is now programmatic. A lot of funds now say, as part of my portfolio, I want 1%, 2%, 5% in BTC. And whenever the AUM goes up, they just buy more BTC. So it's been game-changing, will continue to be game-changing. If the ETH ETF gets approved, I don't think it will be approved in 24, to be clear. I do think there's a high probability in 25. It will continue to be game-changing in terms of capital inflows, use cases, etc. And I would love an ETH ETF to be approved, because then it probably means proof of stake is not a security, and you can actually do a lot of interesting things, and will be revolutionary. And also then the applications on ETH, the way I think of ETH is that it's a decentralized AWS or platform in which you're building applications, then start getting a lot of value. So I think it is game-changing, will continue to be game-changing. So the ideal number of founders per startup, two of them being technically oriented and the other more focused on people and sales. Two is the best number. I don't know if there's an ideal number. It could be one, it could be two, it could be three. The two, when it works well, is the best, but two founders fighting is also one of the main reasons companies fail. So on average, I say two. Depends on the category, by the way, on what the correct founder mix is. In some cases, it's a technological problem, so technology founder and a sales strategy, whatever founder makes sense. In some cases, you could also make an argument it should be COO, CTO, and CEO, or head of sales, CEO, CTO. So three. It really depends on the problem you're facing, right? Obviously, if you're building an AI company, you want the best tech founder you want. If you're building a marketplace for B2B, the technology is not going to be the hard part. The getting the credibility to get access to data to convince the incumbents to change their approach is going to be a lot harder. And so more sales, operations, marketing is going to play a much larger role. So your founder makeup depends on the category of what you're building. Jean-Philippe. Bonjour, Fabrice. What are the most important skills a student should develop in order to work as an analyst in a VC fund? What are the qualities you're looking for when recruiting graduates? So we do have a analyst program. We recruit graduates from college. Be thoughtful, be logical, and be embedded in the space, right? Like, so if you're spending all your free time thinking about startups, working in startups in your summers, you have a perspective on what are the companies that you think are amazing and interesting, and you'll be more attractive. Now, in terms of what you major in, kind of irrelevant. I mean, whether it's economics, computer science, etc. At the end of the day, we are going to look for signals of willingness to work hard and intelligence. So, because we're only recruiting two every 2 years, we have a 2-year analyst program. And we currently only recruited the Ivy League schools, and we'll take the highest, the top, 1% of students from a GPA perspective. People that have shown a willingness to work really hard, that are really smart. But beyond that, because there's still a lot of those people, knowledge of the category, thoughtfulness, and people that also jive with us. We're kind of all nerdy people. Like in my free time, I like write blog posts, and actually I code my blog. I code the sites for Triton. I've coded an interface for my home between Alexa and everything of the home environment. And we play video games, So people are that are going to fit right in with we play Settlers of Catan or whatever. Lacey, if you live in a different time, past or present, what do you think you would do professionally or future? So people idealize the past, but the past kind of sucked, honestly. 200 years ago, your life expectancy would have been 29. Most of us in this audience right now would probably be dead. We lived horrible lives. We are so privileged to be living in the world we live in today. We have a quality of life that the kings of yesteryear could not even imagine. I mean, because we only work, on average, in the West, less than 40 hours a week, we can go on vacation. We can ponder the meaning of life. We can try to think through fulfillment. In the past, it would have been all survival all the time. So you go 10,000 BC or before, when we're hunter-gatherers, we're just nomadic and constantly trying to find whatever the new mammoth and trying to find food to eat. Would have been, a rather difficult life. Then we became farmers from 10,000 BC to, let's say, 1800. Again, we'd be suffering from starvation multiple times a year. Our crops would fail. There'd be disease. We were surviving. There was no self-actualization. Yes, there was a tiny, tiny, tiny percent of the population that could be better off and could do their own thing, either because they were the very high end of the nobility, or because they were intellectuals or artists that have been paid for by the nobility and the rich. But they were far and few between, right? Like the Da Vinci's and whatever, Leibniz and Michelangelo's and Voltaire were far and few between. So would it be interesting to observe the Roman Empire and the rise of Augustus? Absolutely. Would it be interesting to meet Da Vinci and to meet the founding fathers in the U.S.? Absolutely. But would we really have liked to live there? Probably not. The I think life in the future is only going to get better. I can imagine a world 100 years from now where you have these Star Trek replicators, right? Like, imagine a atomic level 3D printer where you say you want something, food, a cell phone, whatever it may be, and you get it, or a holodeck. I mean, it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be because tech becomes cheaper. So essentially, all these things, tech has made things significantly cheaper over time. Right, like food is much cheaper than it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Flying in a plane, these cell phones, computers, everything is getting a lot cheaper. So I can imagine a world where the marginal cost of electricity is zero because we'll have infinite electricity through solar and or fusion. And then with your atomic level 3D printer, most things will be free. And in that world, you'll be really able to think through, how do you self-actualize? What is your purpose in a world where you don't need to work for survival, basically. You will work because you want to. You'll want to be an explorer in a starship. And maybe there'll be your recognition, the personal value you get out of that. So I think the future is going to be extraordinary, and we're here as founders and as VCs trying to build it and make it happen, and I'm beyond excited for it. So I think the future is interesting. I'd like to live through these different moments in the past and see how they were like on a day-to-day basis. But I suspect that our reality today is glorious, right? Like, even the kings, and I know Jasim would like to experience living like a king, and there are moments where it'd be good, but I don't know, like the idea of like not having toilets and not having indoor plumbing and etc. I mean, when I go on these crazy adventures, like I go to Antarctica, where I need to like poop in a plastic bag and carry it for a few weeks, and I need to melt snow in order to rehydrate my food, and there's no shower, no nothing. That's kind of like what living was like back in the day. And you come back from that and you're like, OMG, we are so privileged. We are so blessed. We're living such cosseted, beautiful, amazing lives, and we should appreciate them more because we are the luckiest people ever. And so I have so much gratitude. Adam, my main competitor received 200 million in recent debt round 21, ordered 90 million in the round led by SoftBank. I think this is a good sign for me because they started in 2007. So now they're too big and too slow. My startup is like a small pirate ship that can easily change direction, add new features, etc. Am I wrong? That web and the internet in general and startups are a world where the fast eat the slow. It's not the big that beat the small. It's the opposite. The smaller, nimbler, faster typically win. And by the way, getting money from SoftBank in 21 usually puts you in a very, very bad position. Your watermark on the valuation is too high. You probably spent too much, and so even though you had a big debt round, you may have actually used it ineffectively, and now you're facing issues. So I totally agree. That's why I never worried that much about like the all these antitrust cases in tech are funny because as soon as they go after the company, it's too late. And the company's already on the way down. Like when IBM was faced with the antitrust in the early 80s, they were already being beaten by the clones. When Microsoft was being attacked by the DOJ in the late 90s and early 2000, they were already being disrupted by the Googles of the world. And now they're going after like whatever Apple and Google. And I'm like, OpenAI and others are going to disrupt them. So I don't worry all that much. There's so much disruption. So yes, the small will eat the big and run circles around them. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Okay, 1 hour and 90 minutes in. 90 minutes in, 1 hour and a half in. Let's see if they had other previously submitted questions that I didn't cover yet. No. Oops, sorry. Go through the emails. I should have probably done it. Tech startup cannibalism, premature obsolescence. Productivity. Whoa, 1 second. Probably should have read this earlier. Okay. I guess three sets of questions submitted by Oliver Blaise or Olivier Blaise. One on productivity and lifestyle. So I did an episode on playing unicorns not that long ago. Let's see the name and title on how to basically be productive and how to lead a life where it's episode 44, the last one. And I explained how I outsource most things in life. And so the question here is, what do you do with GPT versus virtual assistants? And the reality is, I use the virtual assistant in the Philippines for most tasks. In fact, they will use GPT instead for me. What I do with GPT, honestly, it's like more very targeted tasks, like, oh, I forgot how to code this function on my blog. Please send me the CSS for that, or research on different topics. The VAs do the everything from calendar management to actually uploading the blog posts that I write on the blog and getting everything ready. So are you sharing your personal assistant with your partner or home staff? So the personal assistant, though, is dedicated to me. My butler / estate manager is dedicated to me. But my partner and I share the entire staff for the home, and we have like a team for the child rearing, I guess. And I covered how I do it with 4 or 5 people that work one at a time, but 7:30 a.m. 7:30 p.m. 5 with a shared docs, etc. So watch episode 44 for more information here. So in that episode, I also talked about how I live across different cities, between Turks and Caicos, New York, and the question is, how does one do that with children? Well, I'm obviously extraordinarily privileged to be in a position to have kids that are young enough that I can actually just take them with me everywhere. New York is going to be our main base. My son is going to the École, which is a French-American school, which is trying to blend the very best of the French system in terms of like intellectual rigor with creativity and public speaking and team building of the American system. And one more question about Olivier about investing in France. What do you think of like the system in France? So what's interesting is France used to be a backwater of investing, and has come a long, long way. I think Xavier Niel, the founder of Free, can take a big credit for building a school and an incubator that has now become an ecosystem for a whole bunch of new startups. And so the incubation plus it's called, I think, Station F and something 42. And so France, because of that, has now become way more relevant in terms of tech startups. Now, the very best founders often still leave to go to the US to build companies in the US because, of course, if you're going to build, might as well go build for the largest market. But it is definitely come of age. 1 second, let me go see through a few more questions. What do you think of digital biology? So I don't spend enough time looking at this, but of course, where are we seeing AI in biology? The best example of that is probably AlphaFold. And so it's where you're seeing the folding of the proteins being done in a gamified way as a means of trying to find new drugs and drug compatibility, et cetera. So AlphaFold is absolutely innovative and has done and found things that were not possible before. And I suspect more of that is happening, not following, and that's a question from Natalia, on a day-to-day basis. So can't comment more intelligently than that. Let's see, there's a few more. Macro, opportunities at VC, structure, no, covered that. With your milestone birthday coming up, you can't wait. What adventures and ambitions are you most looking forward to in the next half century? Interesting. My friends made a 40th birthday video for me. And the main recommendation there was like, whatever, get married, have kids. And I'm like poo-pooing that vision and concept. So I'm turning 50 August 3rd of this year. A lot has changed in the last decades. A lot has also in a way has not changed. I'm still a tech founder. I'm still optimistic. I still love the same things, from kitesurfing to paddle to video games to tennis, etc., to skiing. I'm looking forward to what the next few decades. I mean, I'm a new parent, so that adventure in parenting is going to be extraordinary. And also, I actually am excited. We are going to rise to the challenge of the 21st century. We are going to address inequality of opportunity and climate change and the mental and physical well-being crisis. And we're going to do it through technology. And I'm excited to be in the midst of things and to both help bring it about and see it happen. And so beyond excited for what the decades to come have to bring. And it's hopefully with the longevity startups that we've also indirectly invested in and the progress, we can continue to have extraordinary health span, right? So it's not just longevity you want to have, but you want to have healthy longevity. You want to be able to keep doing all the things you love intellectually, personally, physically, etc. Jean-Philippe, what is the dream guest you would like to have on Playing with Unicorn podcast and why? So first of all, Playing with Unicorns has been less about guests than it's been really sharing thoughts and perspectives on. So often it's been just me talking. Usually with a deck, this is Ask Me Anything, but it's usually been like, how do I raise capital? How do I create a perfect deck? But I do like guests who are extraordinarily thoughtful. I mean, one of the most interesting episodes was a conversation I had with Christian Angermeyer, who was kind of my doppelganger, and I didn't even realize it. It was like a 2-hour, wide-ranging, fascinating conversation. And so more like that, right? Because the obvious answer to the question, by the way, is Bill Gates in terms of understanding everything he went through and why he decided to transition from Microsoft into the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, what they're doing today, or Elon in terms of where he's at, where he's going, what his perspective is, and going through his life. So the obvious answers are like the Bill Gates and Elon Musks of the world. Maybe the more interesting answer would be, what are the people like Christian Angermeyer that I talked to that I didn't know before, that we're going to have this amazing intellectual, personal connection, and we're going to have a discourse and bring our thoughts to a further new level. And I don't know who those people are. I do play unicorns kind of in my spare time, of which I don't have that much. So it's a occasional show. But I'm open to suggestions, and if there's people that you think are like, oh my god, like this is extraordinary, the two of you are going to have the most amazing conversation, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And by the way, I'm also open to ideas for topics I should be covering here. Because the way I approached Playing the Unicorns was, what are all the things I wish I knew when I was starting as a founder when I was 23 and back in 1998 that I now know? And that's why it's really been structured. How do I come up with ideas? How do I evaluate or validate the company, the ideas? How do I raise capital? How do I write a deck? What are the trends, etc.? It's really been if I was to teach a business school class, what would be the content in that business school class? Abdallah, concerning virtual assistants, I launched a startup similar to a startup you invested in 7-10 years ago. Do you think we can convince you to invest in an idea that already invested in and failed? So actually, we have invested in the same concepts multiple times that have failed, because maybe there's a reason for why now. And so, as I said earlier in this conversation, many of the companies in the late 90s, like Webvan and eToys and Chewy, actually made sense. It just didn't make sense then. Not Chewy, Pets.com. They make sense now with Instacart and Chewy. It just didn't make sense back then because the infrastructure needed to make it work didn't happen, right? There was a company called Cosmo that was trying to do like local delivery, but without a smartphone or the GPS, it didn't work. But now, of course, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, whatever, now it really works. But back then, it didn't make sense. So yes, happy to revisit. The burden of proof is reasonably high, but as long as you can show you have unit economics and traction, why not? Have you ever had a founder pitch you for a stake in their company and you end up buying it? Like selling a stake, not. Have we done secondaries? Yes, but not in the early stage. We wouldn't do a secondary and like pre-seed, seed, and A. In the late stage, where the company's worth whatever hundreds of millions or a billion, and the founder is taking a little off the table where you invest, yes. But would I buy a stake in company? Not really. I mean, again, we're angel investors, and so we're writing 300, 400, 500K check. We're not going to. I don't want to own a meaningful chunk of a company unless I'm co-founder, executive chairman, and these I have tendency to build myself, right? Like, so Midas, we're playing that role. It's a startup studio company. I'm executive chairman. I'm very implicated by this company I came up with. It's not one I would, I bought a stake in. So the answer is no, not against it. It would have to be, be rare. I would have to love the person. They would want me as a part in some way, shape, or form. I would have the time to do it, etc. So unlikely, I'd say. Can you share the acceptance percentage of FJ Labs for the pre-seed and seed rounds? What are the chances that you will be invited to a call with your team? Yes. So we get 300 deals a week. The 300 deals come from 3 different sources. One is other VCs, about 100. 2 is founders we backed. So we talk to one VC a day, basically every day per quarter. So we talk to 100 VCs a quarter, let's say, and we share deals with them. And that's the highest conversion rate, taking a call and also investment. Number 2, we backed 1,100 companies today. That's about 2,000 founders. They send us their friends. They come back to the next company. They send us their employees. It's about 100 deals a week. And then cold inbound, either to my email or mostly my LinkedIn, but also, surprisingly, to my Instagram, Facebook, whatever, another 100. Lowest conversion rate, but we do look at it. Of these 300, we take about 40 calls, 50 calls a week. So I'll make, so it's like 15% probability that if you send us a deck or a pitch, we'll take a call. And then we review these in the investment committee call on Tuesdays, 10 to noon EST. And then we'll take a second call with 5 of them, 10 of them every week. Often I will be taking that call. And every week we're investing in 3-4 companies. So I'd say from the 300 submission level to a probability of investment is about 1%. And probability of a first call is like 15%. Now, from a first call to so if we're down to 40, if we took a call with you, about 7, 8, 9% probability that we invest. So it's reasonably good if you pass the threshold for a call. And I think that's kind of it for right now. I think we've covered pretty wide-ranging set of questions and very active and a lot of viewers. So I'm very excited that this show happened. Suggested perhaps I should do this slightly more often, not just once a year on the Ask Me Anything type. Taking my time here because there's a slight delay between me speaking and you guys asking questions. So let me know if there's any more questions to cover, and if not, we're going to wrap. Keep sending me ideas for topics to cover, guests to have, etc., and we'll take them from there. Let's see if someone's okay. I think that's basically it. So this is super fun. This is a fun, fast-paced, engaging conversation. And actually no. One last question I see from Adam. I think this is the last question. What is the last job to be replaced by AI robots? So I don't worry that jobs will be replaced by AI and robots. I mean, a lot of jobs will be replaced by AI and robots, but unemployment is not going to go up. We used to be all farmers, and then we became factory workers, and now we're in services. And all these jobs have been destroyed, but technology usually creates more jobs than it destroys. So let me give you an example. Let's go back 25 years in the past. So let's go to 1999. Imagine in 1999, I told you in 2024, the top 4 job categories of 1999 will no longer exist. There will be no more travel agents. There will be no more bank tellers. All of car manufacturing will have been automated, and retail will have been decimated with all of retail going online. Please describe the unemployment and the economic environment in 2024. And people would be like, oh my God, Great Recession, 25% unemployment, Great Depression, the end of the world. And yet we have lower unemployment now than we had then, because it's easy to imagine the jobs destroyed. It's hard to imagine the new jobs being created from whatever, social media manager and Twitch caster and TikTok celebrity. And so will there be a lot of jobs destroyed by AI and robots? Absolutely. But there'll be many more jobs created. They'll be different than the ones we're being done. And often it'll be good that these jobs are destroyed, right? Like a lot of the jobs being destroyed are jobs that humans shouldn't be doing. We should not be doing this a million times. We're not meant to be doing repetitive, boring tasks. We're not meant to be carrying boxes. We're meant to be using our empathy and our intelligence and our emotions, right? Doctors right now are told not really good diagnostic machines. That's not what humans are good at. AI will do the diagnostics. The doctors will be the empathy compliance mechanism. So I'm very excited for all the jobs that are going to be destroyed because we will have better jobs and it'll be amazing. And as productivity increases, salaries increase and our quality of life will keep increasing. So I am an optimist. There's no worry. I would not worry about the job losses from the tech revolution. They've never been an issue, and I suspect they will never be an issue. But thank you. This was super fun. Look forward to the next one. And yeah, take care.